Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Come on!
Live from Pembroke
Pines.
Live from Pembroke Pines, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator of the Bhakti Center, New Yorker, Stuba Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Friday's Srimad Bhagavatam class. And this is it. We are traveling immediately after the show. We are packing up my mom's apartment down here in Florida. And all three of us, me, Mara, and Mom, are getting on a plane and flying back to New York. I'm going to be back at the farm tomorrow, Stuba. Florida is over. Our little Florida trip is over.
Okay. Time to come back.
If you're ever down in the Fort Lauderdale area, I'm going to give a shout out to our friends at Plant City Pizza. Plant Pizza. At Plant Pizza. Incredible vegan pizza place we went to yesterday.
Did they pay you for this record?
No.
You're doing a commercial for them.
Whenever I'm in Fort Lauderdale, I go to Plant Pizza. No, I'm just sharing it because I appreciate people doing vegan pizza joints.
Okay.
Yeah. You know who was in? A lot of people in there yesterday. A lot of people in there. I was like, I just talked to people and I was like, are you guys vegans?
Snowbirds.
And they were like, no, we are here because of Lent and we were fasting for meat.
Right.
I was like, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah. All good with you?
Everything's good.
All right. You want to make some announcements, Malibu Mara? Look how fast this woman bronzes up. She gets tan in a moment.
She went down there with a layer already from Goa, and then she just like got it going again.
Yeah.
Why don't you have it right now? What's?
I do have a tan. I do have a little bit of a tan.
It's not the same as hers.
No, it's not.
No. Okay. Announcements. We have a asana class with Josh Kane at 10:30 a.m. for our Patreon members. Back to recovery group meetings at 12:30 and 1. And if you have questions for Q&A day tomorrow, you can email us at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And then Divya's masterclass is still available if you want 40% off. I have the link in the show notes.
Okay. I think that link in the show notes just gives them the 15%, though. There's like another. We got to look into that. Right?
Okay, I'll look into that.
We're on it. Okay. All right.
All right, brother.
Well, we've got some interesting nuggets, sir.
Just one nugget today, right?
Yeah.
Do you want me to read the nugget or do you want to read the nugget?
Why don't you read it? This is from Dr. Joyce Brothers. She's like the original pop psychiatrist from the 70s or 80s. I know who, right? Didn't you grow up hearing about Dr. Joyce Brothers?
All the time, Dr. Joyce Brothers.
Yeah. Maybe she was she a radio host?
She may have had a radio. Let me see. I have pulled her thing up. Just a second. Dr. Joyce Brothers. Dr. Joyce Brothers. She was an American psychologist, television personality, advice columnist, and writer. It doesn't mention anything about radio there, but
okay, advice columnist.
She won the prize, top prize on the $64,000 question. Right? Like $64,000. What's that going to do for you now? That was like
off my credit card debt.
That was like a fortune back then, right? So she won the $64,000.
I used to love those game shows. We're like $20,000. The new treasure hunt. You win a check for $20,000. It was like, oh my God. Sitting there watching the show, like on the edge of my seat.
So she won.
They were much more impressed with something like a new washer and dryer. And everyone would be like, oh my God.
And now it's like, who wants to be a millionaire, right?
Yeah, now it's like a new washer and dryer.
Well, you don't even know what a millionaire is anymore, because I think like a millionaire used to mean like you had like $1 million worth of
net worth
stuff.
Net worth was $1 million. Yeah.
And now I think it means you have to make $1 million a year to be considered a millionaire.
Oh, really? They've changed it?
I think so.
I think I might be a millionaire in lira, Italian lira,
Okay.
or
Pesos.
a millionaire, or in rupees, maybe, or the Thai baht. I might be a millionaire.
Okay, here's what Dr. Joyce Brothers had to say.
Okay.
She said, this is about intimacy, Raghunath.
Hmm.
Okay. Real intimacy is only possible to the degree that we can be honest about what we are doing and feeling. Dr. Joyce Brothers.
Honest about what we are doing and feeling.
Yeah. And
Is
in
that
other
from a
words,
particular context? I don't. Just hearing that, I don't sort of. I need to hear that in a context. What do
well,
you
I
think?
was going to place it in another, probably not the context that she was coming from.
You're going to put it in the Bhagavatam
I was gonna put it in the
context,
Bhagavatam
like with
context.
Gajendra the elephant.
No,
I
but
was listening to Gajendra stories this morning. Okay, go on.
well, no, why don't you get started with it? In other words, what I mean, just on surface value, right? Intimacy means two people being near to each other, right? Being
Right.
close with each other, and so I suppose it's very natural. People desire intimacy. It seems to be a very core desire, right?
Sure. The thing that comes to my mind at first with intimacy is when people have in coupleship, when there's person who can't when people live in secrecy, when they have secrets, they're hiding things from their partners, when they can't be vulnerable, they can't be share with what they're going through, they
Okay.
can't then what happens is you can never have a closeness with the person because you're never meeting that person. That's
Yeah.
sort of what I drew out of it. I don't know if that's
Two
where you were going
facades.
with it.
These two facades are getting close to each other.
This happens all the time with a person who's maybe they're hiding an addiction. There's people who have like cocaine addictions that get hidden, somehow secretly hidden from their partner for like 10 years, or a sex addiction. They get secretly hidden from their partner. They never mention these things for years. And then they get found out. And the person, the other person in the relationship are like, who was I married to? Like, who have I been with? Who have I been talking to? This person had a whole double life. So that's sort of what came to my mind.
Let's say it's not so extreme that it's a double life, right? But let's just say like what we put forward, even to those people that we're very close with, isn't entirely honest, or it's kind of like we're playing a role rather than being our genuine self. Then the intimacy that we apparently are sharing, maybe physical intimacy, we may feel a sense of emotional intimacy, but it's actually built on something that's false and that can't be maintained, and it ultimately falls apart. Right? But what I was thinking of this, I'm thinking of this in the context of the chapter that we begin today, right? Which is a fascinating little chapter, famous chapter, right?
That is me.
Now we're reading about Bharata, how he was this ideal king, how he had genuine affection for all of his citizens, how he had a way of engaging them all from a very high level of spiritual realization, and then how he gave just clear, valuable instructions to his sons, who would be the heirs of the kingdom, and then how with incredible detachment, right, with it just like the kind of detachment that only comes from deep spiritual insight, he walks away from it all. And then we begin to hear about how he lived out in the forest now, right? Now he doesn't have anything that he used to have there. He also doesn't have any intimacy, right? Like, that's there. Apparently. But now we're hearing about him out there and his spiritual practices, right? He's like this mountain man out there. He's living off he's scavenging for foods, for roots and things like that. And even those, he's finding them not even like, oh, I need to eat. It's more like he's trying to make beautiful offerings of that, even of the simplest things. And every day morning when he's experiencing deep spiritual emotions, and every morning when the sun goes up, when the sun's going down at midday, he's saying this, he's chanting this verse, which is all about how the universe is like maintained. We should go back to that verse. Let me pull it up.
It's a cool verse.
Yeah,
Notice thinking.
Yeah.
Notice thinking here. I was like, in one sense, like people want to think, if you think of a person like him, in one sense, by if you were to checklist in what they have materially, They are what we would consider like a derelict, a homeless person. But there's something different than sort of like what we would,
I think that he would be seen as a hermit. I think
I
Rishabdev was
get it,
seen
but
more
even
like
within hermetism, there is a difference.
hermitude.
Hermeneutics. Even within hermit life, there is like something that sadhus have, which is a regulate. One is generally in the mode of ignorance. Like oftentimes there's
Derelict.
maybe mental illness or intoxication or sloth or laziness or dependence.
Yeah.
It's something like an unfortunate thing. An unfortunate thing happened that made this person homeless. You know what I mean? They can't cope. They have PTSD or something like that. Whereas this is a choice and a person is incredibly sattvic. They're regulated. They rise early. They bathe 3 times a day. They study sacred literature. They do their worship and their meditation. It's the same exact thing, except sattvic. And because they're sattvic, they're illumined, and they don't have they're not affected by the material poverty. Matter of fact, it's searched out. Matter of fact, they gave up everything for that material poverty. It's very, very interesting. And it brings to this point that it's got nothing to do with a person's material situation. It's got everything to do with their relationship to the gunas, whether they can be in goodness, rajas, or tamas, whether they're going to be happy, wise, enlightened, and healthy. You could be rich and be tamasic, or you could be rich and be very sattvic. You know, we hear stories of great kings that are incredibly sattvic, organized, meticulous, spiritual, deep. And then you hear people who have nothing, and they also are meticulous, sharp, and vice versa. You can have, and vice versa. So anyway, that was just thinking of it, because we call him a mountain man, and I'm thinking of this guy living in a crazy broken down RV. He's not that. He is like an empowered, blazing flame of a being.
Okay. Thank you, Raghunath.
But yes,
for making that clear.
He is
and that is, and his thought, like where his mind is at, is expressed in sometimes when you want to know, like, what is this chapter really about? You just have to go to the end of the previous chapter, right? Because there's connections. And so at the end of the previous chapter that we just finished yesterday, we're hearing about how he's like, how he's up there in that mountain life, but he's very clean, right? He's bathing 3 times a day. His curly hair,
his beard is
so
brushed.
I don't know if he's brushed his beard, but it's clean, right? And he's, but to show us where his thought is at, what he's contemplating, why is he out there, right? We hear this last verse where it's talking about how he's seeing Lord Vishnu in the sun, right? The sun's coming up and he's meditating that Lord Vishnu is there within that sun. He's illuminating, this is the last verse, illuminating the entire universe and bestowing benedictions upon his devotees. The Lord created this universe from his own spiritual potency. This is what he's contemplating out there in the forest. According to his desire, the Lord entered this universe as the super soul, and by virtue of his different potencies, he's maintaining all living entities who are wandering around here desiring material enjoyment. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who is the giver of intelligence. So, okay, so he's out there, and this lifestyle that it's hard to maintain that kind of thought when you're the king. It's challenging in a particular way, because here he's saying, the Supreme Lord is maintaining everything and everyone, behind everything, behind the sun, behind the river. It's Krishna, it's Vishnu that has come into this world and is maintaining us all, and I'm feeling it, I'm seeing it everywhere I look. But when you're the king, it's kind of like, I'm maintaining everybody, right?
Right. It's completely different.
Everybody needs me.
Different.
Yeah. So he's really getting that there. Now he's out. Now what we're going to see is in this chapter, he's out there. He's deep into this meditation, but something breaks it, right? Something diverts that clarity of thought of what he was seeing. He was seeing what's behind the facade of this world,
right?
And something diverted that vision, and it became focused on an object of intimacy.
Right.
Now, is it wrong that he have an intimate relationship? No.
It goes from great to very good. That's what happens.
In a
He goes
sense, it's
from
kind of like that.
great to very good.
Okay, so let's read this chapter. But here's how it relates to Dr. Joyce Brothers, right? She's saying there's a type of intimacy that we can have that's based on falsehood. This intimacy that he'll have with a beautiful little fawn, right?
Mm.
Perfect little beautiful object, to feel a close connection with. Right?
Sure. Nothing more intimate than a fawn.
And
Ever be around a
nothing
baby
more-
fawn? I have. I've
Have
held
I
a
ever
baby
seen a
fawn.
baby fawn?
I've
seen
held a baby fawn. They're like so
Congratulations, Ragnar.
snuggly and sweet. I'm serious.
I remember I once saw a baby fawn that had just been separated from its mother at New Vrindavan. I woke up one morning, I opened up my door, and there was a little baby fawn lying there.
Oh, and you
And then
became the surrogate father?
No, they brought it to the cows, and the cows raised it. It may still be there. I mean, if anyone is here from New Vrindavan, maybe they can tell us. But it was raised by the cows.
Started giving milk.
Yeah. So here, we're going to see Dr. Joyce Brothers. So she was saying that real intimacy has to be based on truth, on honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And the intimacy that he has with his deer, it's not that the intimacy itself is wrong, but there's the truth behind that intimacy gets lost. In other words, we all may have to play the maintainer in life, in different ways, right? Like you're a parent, Raghunath, right?
Yep.
So in a sense, each one of your children, you see almost like when that little fawn, when they're born, they can hardly stand, right? They have their little legs and they can barely move, and
Yeah, adorable.
They're absolutely adorable. And pulling the heartstrings, like it needs me to protect it. It needs me to care for it, right? And I imagine as a parent, you feel that way, right? Even when the children are grown up, the parents may feel a sense of like they need me, right? But here's the question, we may have to play the role of maintainer in life, but when we maintain another being, when we have that intimacy, particularly in this case, it was the intimacy of like, I must lovingly maintain this dependent being. Is that maintenance and is that intimacy based on awareness that I'm acting on behalf of the true maintainer that's behind everything?
Right. Or am I'm the maintainer.
Or
It's me.
I become the artificial maintainer.
And we see that play out as kids grow up, and we think, what are they going to do without me? What are they going to do without my great advice?
Yeah.
How are they going to do anything on their own? And we see overly attached parents sometimes. And then we get bitter at the child because we had this codependent relationship where like, look, I'm paying for your car insurance, and I'm paying for your cell phone, and you don't want my advice anymore. And this goes on again and again. Or sometimes we think, if I die, how will anybody live without me? How will life go on without me? It's deeply rooted, and I like this story because it starts to like untangle that. Like, okay, you're doing a lot, but you're not the ultimate maintainer here.
Right. And we need to ask this question, is my intimacy with any other living being, is it helping to promote my remembrance or my forgetfulness of God's presence behind everything? Right. It's so like in the Bhakti Shastras, in the Bhakti teachings like Bhagavatam, it's not saying that we can't have intimacy with other living beings. It's actually encouraging that, but it's saying, but it must be done within the right context, right? It must be done on the basis of truth. And if that's how we approach it, then those relationships and our duties within those relationships, they can help facilitate the the depth of our understanding of that truth. But if not, they tend to draw us away from that truth, right?
Right.
And
and leadership, I was thinking, because he was the king.
The leadership,
and he
similar.
was, the taking care of the subjects. It's another great point here before we get into it is that I love the fact in Vedic culture there is gradations of spiritual life. I never thought, growing up Catholic and however Christianity is taught, and I know it's taught in so many different ways, it's this idea, usually when you meet a Bible thumper on the street, they're like, all you got to do is accept Jesus into your life. I would always be like, that's all I got to do? Okay, I do. I accept him into my life. Now what? That's all you got to do. Well, now you're in. I was like, it's that easy to join your club? Come on, raise the bar.
Oh, well, it's that easy to join the club, but to find your salvation, right?
Well, you just have to accept. You just have to accept, Kostuba. If you just accept and let go of all this nonsense you're into, you'll be saved. So I always felt like, why is my mom? No offense, she's in the other room, but why is my mom go to the exact same place that Saint Francis of Assisi is going? Exactly. Come on. It's like there's got to be gradation. So here we find, like, Maharaj Bharat is very evolved, incredibly evolved, but not 100% yet.
Something happened. Yeah,
something happens, and it's okay, because you come into your next life. Life is very long, and then you take another body, and you gotta sand down the project, right? We're sanding us. The material universe is sanding us down. Our spiritual path sands us down to make this very refined being before we can go back to Krishna. And so this is the process. He had attachment to a deer.
But what I was thinking, I was just thinking about this yesterday, Raghunath, as I was walking around,
You're walking around, looking at things, analyzing life.
I was walking around.
People don't understand what's going on in that head of yours when they see you walking.
No, it's just similar to what's going on in your head. The idea that Bharat Maharaj, right?
Yeah.
We see him reach this incredible high level of spiritual insight and then get diverted by his affection for this adorable little deer, right? And then he had to come back, and he had 2 more lives to live, right? 2 more lives. And one was as a deer, and the next was as a human being. And in both of those lifetimes, he had something that we don't have. He had the remembrance of exactly how he got there, right?
That's sort of a gift, isn't it? And they said, it says in the purports also that some will have that.
Okay.
Like some will have that. There'll
Do
be
you
a
have
little
that,
clair.
Tell the truth.
I can't tell you. I'm not allowed to publicly reveal these things.
Rascal.
But I can say that some have that. They can remember their previous life. We call them clairvoyance.
Okay.
All right. Some people have that. They can remember past, present, understand the future, and then they just have to keep it private.
Okay. Maybe I'm doing that, Raghunath. But
total
here's the point.
Right,
let's assume that we don't have it. Okay.
Squirrel. Yeah.
Let's assume that we don't have it. But that doesn't mean that we can't live in a state of consciousness, almost like we can make certain assumptions, right? Even if we don't know the details. You with me? You understand?
I am, but I'm seeing Mara's little faces sneaking into the camera.
What's he talking about?
Get in.
Past lives. As soon as you start talking about past lives, everyone perks up.
Just see her little eyes creep over.
So, but we can, even if you or I don't know exactly how we got to the position that we're in.
Okay.
We can assume.
Yeah.
We can make certain assumptions that, like, we're in a very fortunate position where the door is open, and we should live this life with the kind of determination that Bharat had as Jada Bharat, where it's like, okay, I know that I got here. I know I'm close to breaking free, and I'm not going to let anything divert me from it. I'm not going to become diverted from it. I think we can, in other words, let's assume that we're close, and let's not get stuck again.
Sure. Sometimes astrologers do things like this. They give you some insight into a previous life where you might have been incredibly abusive or incredibly violent or incredibly done some horrible thing, and you have some things that are happening to you. And it's like, why? And you feel frustrated because sometimes we do. Sometimes you get dealt like the ace of spades on a regular basis, just like everything's,
Ace of spades is a good thing, I think.
That's a good thing. What's the ace of spades?
I mean, it's good to get aces. You're playing poker. You want to get aces, right?
But we. Oh,
Okay,
I
pull
almost
yourself
lost
together.
my mind.
Come on.
Oh, I'm getting old. Like, even isn't it weird when laughing can be dangerous? There's a few times during this podcast, not today, but in general, that I thought I
You've
might
come
die.
close. Yeah,
I might die due to laughter.
you have us concerned sometimes, Raghunath.
Okay, what were we just talking about?
You're saying about the ace of spades. If you might get dealt the ace of spades again and again. I shouldn't have said it. It set you off again. I don't know what it is.
All right, all I was saying is there's a time where you could get dealt repeatedly bad things in your life, and you're like, "Why me? This is so unfair." Then you get someone like Rowdy Cage or Drew Lawrence or one of our astrologers that we love, and they say, "Well, in the they don't even talk to you about this life. They just go right to your last life and say, "Hey, your last life, you caused a lot of problems." And somebody told me here. Someone told me they were having a very, very difficult time finding a partner. That men always leave them
Okay.
and stuff like that. And an astrologer just said, you were a womanizer in your last life. You're
I know
a
who you're talking
womanizer.
about. I know who it is. Your friend.
But you're a womanizer. And because of this, you're going to struggle. And they're like, oh, man. So anyway, sometimes when we understand the past, it helps us. It would be
Yeah.
a great gift to have that. That's where I was going with that.
Could be. Yeah.
Judd Bart had it. Could be a good gift to have it and understand. Well, you know what it does? It let goes of your resentment oftentimes, and you just
Okay.
accept this is some karma I'm dealing with, and I'm just going to work my best. So Judd Bart had it.
Gotcha.
He kept that clarity, even in an animal body.
Right.
Even as an animal, we just think of a dumb animal. No, completely conscious animal, and then he took it into that next human birth. This is such a good story.
It's a great story. So we'll get into it. And before we do it, just one last thing I want to read. Chapuji shared something from the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 8.
Yeah.
Madhya 871. Here's the quote. Spontaneous loving service to the Lord. This means when our bhakti it's not like we do because we're supposed to, but we're doing it out of love, right? Spontaneous loving service to the Lord is called devotional service with an intimate attachment between the servitor and the served. The high levels of bhakti. This intimacy is called mamata. Mamata. I think maybe that indicates, again, I'm no Sanskrit expert, but like the Lord is mine and I belong to the Lord, like that. Between the servitor and the served, there's a feeling of oneness. This fixed consciousness is on a higher platform than simple cognizance of love of Godhead. Okay, so this intimacy is based on truth, right? This is the true intimacy based on truth. Okay, so let's get into the chapter. Why don't I read the verses today, Ro? Because I'm gonna blow through them because it just kind of tells.
I'm going to try my best to squirrel and take you off your direct path and bring in other interesting.
I may have to hit the mute
detours.
button. Usually we reserve the mute button for the end, like when the music's playing, but who knows?
Can someone do some research and find out if the ace of spades is a bad thing or a good thing?
In poker, an ace is a good thing, Raghunath.
I know, but maybe why does Lemmy from Motorhead say the ace of spades? Like, what's that song about? I thought it meant like you got dealt a bad card.
Maybe the only card I need is the ace of spades.
Oh, really?
Anyway,
people can check it out for me. We don't have to talk about it, but message board, you're on.
Okay, here we go. Text 1. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 8, entitled A Description of the Character of Bharata Maharaj. Now he's out there in the forest, right? Sri Shukadev Goswami continued. Right, Shukadev Goswami, he's sitting there talking to Maharaj Pariksit, who's going to die now in 4 days or 3 days or something like that. My dear king, one day after finishing his morning duties, evacuating, urinating, bathing, etc., Maharaj Bharat sat down on the bank of the river Gandaki for a few minutes and began chanting his mantra, beginning with Omkara. Om. So he's fixed, right?
Yeah.
Okay. O king, while Bharata Maharaj was sitting on the bank of the river, a doe,
a deer,
a female deer.
That was a setup. Okay. Go ahead.
Sitting on the river, a doe, being very thirsty, came there to drink. While the doe was drinking with great satisfaction, a lion, which was very close, roared very loudly. This was frightful to every living entity, and it was heard by the doe. By nature,
Right.
the doe was always afraid of being killed by others,
Mm,
and was always looking about suspiciously.
right. Deers do that. They're very suspicious animals.
They're
You,
looking
you, you, who, me?
Leave me alone. When it heard the lion's tumultuous roar, it became very agitated.
Mm-hmm.
Looking here and there with disturbed eyes, the doe, although it had not fully satisfied itself by drinking water, suddenly leapt across the river. The doe was pregnant, Raghunath.
Yeah.
And when it jumped out of fear, the baby deer fell from its womb into the flowing waters of the river. Being separated from its flock and distressed, is it flock of deer?
Flock, herd of deer.
Flock of seagulls. Being
Thank you.
separated from its flock and distressed
Nice.
by its miscarriage, the black doe, having crossed the river, was very much distressed. Indeed, it fell down in a cave and died immediately. Oh, heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
Now here's my here's
Oh.
my question. I have a question about this, Raghunath. Just a
Yeah.
practical question. Are you thinking the same thing?
What about the umbilical cord? Is that what you're thinking?
Exactly. Exactly. What about the
You and
umbilical?
I think alike.
Yeah.
Who cut the umbilical cord?
I guess
How
she
did deer
must
cut
have.
the
The
Can
deer
someone Google up how animals cut their umbilical
The
cord?
deer bites it. The deer chews it away. The mother.
Maybe he chewed it while
So
jumping.
the mother must have, maybe when they landed, it just chewed it, and then that was it. You know.
Maybe someone Google up deer umbilical cord. How do they do it? Because
They
they
chew
don't
it, I'm
barely have
telling you.
teeth.
No,
They have little
No,
teeth.
not the baby. The mother chews it.
I know the mother has little teeth.
Yeah.
Deer are like vegetarians.
So what's your question?
My
then?
sheep can't chew anything. They got like little corn
Oh, no,
nibble
no.
nubs
The
for
deer
teeth.
has teeth, Raghunath. Come on.
I know, but very tiny.
Large enough to chew the umbilical cord. Any case, I
I
think
didn't
we're
know you
squirreling
studied
off on the
deer in
deer.
college, Kostuba.
Okay. No, they eat it. That's Ganesh is saying they chew on it.
Okay.
Being separated from its flock, distressed by, okay, now the deer dies. Heartbreaker. Okay. Now, next part. Yeah.
Okay.
The great king Bharata, while sitting on the bank of the river, saw the small deer, bereft of its mother, floating down the river. Seeing this, he felt great compassion. It's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, right?
No, that's good. Right? If you imagine if
Compassion
you
is good.
saw a deer floating down the
I would
Ganga, like
pick it
not
up out of the
floating, that's a
water.
rapid river they call Gandaki, getting
Yeah.
swept down that river,
Yeah.
you would immediately be like, oh my God, I got to help this
Help
being,
that deer.
right?
Like a sincere friend, he lifted the infant deer from the waves and, knowing it to be motherless, brought it to his ashram.
Yep.
Okay. Gradually, Maharaj Bharata became very affectionate toward the deer. He began to raise it and maintain it by giving it grass. He was always careful to protect it from the attacks of tigers and other animals. When it itched, he petted it. And in this way, he always tried to keep it in a comfortable condition. He sometimes kissed it out of love. Being attached to raising the deer, Maharaj Bharata forgot the rules and regulations for advancement of spiritual life. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with his compassion, but he began to neglect his spiritual practices.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, his sadhana, his daily practice. Now, those practices are designed to keep us meditating on truth, right? Meditating on what's behind the surface level of this world. Now, the problem is here is that the deer brought him right to the surface level, kept him there, right? And having that compassion could have worked if he would have maintained the spiritual practice. He could have kept it in the right context,
Right.
but he's going to get lost. So being attached to raising the deer, Maharaj Bharata forgot the rules and regulations for the advancement of spiritual life, and he gradually forgot to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the real maintainer.
Sure. You know, Kostub, this brings up this other point that
What's
we
that?
have a particular dharma at different times of our life. when we're a
Sure.
student, when we're a child,
Yeah.
right? We have duties in this world. When we're a
Right.
parent, sometimes people say, well, what should I do with my life? Well, you're a parent. Well, you got to parent your kids. That's like a number one thing to do. You got to raise your kids as best
Right.
you can, responsibly, add some spiritual life to their life. And then as the kids grow older, they have a different type of dharma. And it sort of changes as we grow older. So it's not like we shouldn't take care of helpless animals. That's a whole dharma in itself. But at the time of that, he's getting ready to leave his body any
Okay.
moment now. And now you have to start thinking in a whole different way. Not that I want to neglect or cause harm, but at the same time, you've got to make the main thing right now.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because it's what you're saying is all kind of laid out. He lived the responsible life in all the different stages of life, and as a king, he was a married person, right? And even that stage of life is considered the stage of life where you are the maintainer, right? Because if you look at the
Right.
4 stages of life in the yogic or the Vedic kind of culture or paradigm, the first one, you're a celibate student. You don't earn any money. You don't maintain anyone. You're maintained, right?
Mhm.
Then comes married life, let's say roughly late teens or early 20s up until about, 50. That you're having children, you're maintaining the children, right? So you got to work, you need to earn, you need to maintain. And also, you're also meant to maintain the other ashramas. Like you're meant to maintain the celibate students and you're meant to maintain the retired people, right? You're the money earners and you're the providers, right, in that stage of life. And then when you're 50, you retire. It means your kids are now supporting you. You supported them. Now they're grown up, they're earning money, and you can retire from the role of the maintainer and adopt a role of going deep into spiritual life, going deep into meditation, going deep into spiritual practice, being maintained by the others, right?
Mm.
So you're right. He had lived the role of the maintainer, and he walked away from it specifically to let go of it, right? Specifically, like, no, I'm not going to make sure I'm not playing that role anymore. I'm going to walk away from the whole. People aren't going to be coming up and asking me for advice. People aren't going to, what to speak of
You have
maintaining them.
one more duty,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's your duty to the Lord.
In one sense,
Kasub,
the duty to let go of everything, right? But he didn't let go.
Kasub, this is
Yeah.
exactly the part of the Bhagavatam I was reading to Gopal Chandra last summer
Wow.
when he was leaving his body.
Wow.
Because one of our dear students / friends / Zoomer.
When you say deer, you mean
Dear to us, not
he
fawn.
wasn't a deer.
He wasn't a deer.
Okay.
Wasn't a deer. He's a great soul and initiated devotee. But we are reading to him about Maharaj Bharat and the deer and this whole thing. Why? Because there is that feeling, especially when you have to leave your body at a younger age. Like, what will people do without me? So I thought this would be good to read about. He's done his duties as a husband, done his duties as a son, done his duties as a parent. Those duties are finished now. Now we have one duty left. And this is exactly where Maharaj Bharat is right now. And it's exactly what we need to hear ourselves, because we never know when it's going to be our time. Like this, now is the time for this duty. Everything else, I've done all the other duties in this world, or my body won't let me do any other duties except this one duty.
Right.
We're all going to get that sort of like gong. It's time. Now is the time.
Right. Yeah. Going back to the prayer that was the last verse of the previous chapter, where it says, he says, this is what it says again. According to his desire, speaking of Lord Vishnu, the Lord entered this universe as the super soul. And by virtue of his different potencies, he is maintaining all living entities, right? He is maintaining all living entities. Truth means realizing that, seeing that everywhere, seeing that again in the sun, seeing that, in the river, seeing that everywhere. We may play the role of the representative maintainer, and that can be part of our yoga path. But he had walked away from that specifically to cultivate this in a different sense, right? To cultivate letting go of even any external role as a maintainer, and meditating on how I'm being maintained and everyone is being maintained at every moment by the Lord. But this little form, right, on the surface level of reality, because it's a fact. Let me ask you a question, Raghunath. He's in the forest.
Yeah.
There's all kind of creatures roaming around.
Very dangerous.
Well, but creatures that are dangerous or not dangerous.
Yeah. Some non-dangerous.
Some non-dangerous creatures are there.
But just
But
creatures, you're saying. There
there's
are
all
creatures,
kind of
yes.
all varieties of
All
creatures,
kinds of creatures are in the forest.
great and small, and
friendly.
But here's my point.
Yeah.
And left and right, he doesn't have to look far to see creatures suffering.
No, you don't.
Right? There's insects that he's watching die. There's all kind of, but he's not getting so attached to that. What is it about this form of the deer that captivated him?
Well, they're sort of soft and cuddly.
They are.
They're babies. Baby everything are cute. If you see a baby rat, rats are generally gross. We jump, but baby rats are
but
cute.
not as cute as a baby deer.
Well, sure. No. Baby deer are the cutest. There must be some objective cuteness out there.
No,
there?
I told you about this, Raghunath. I've spoken about this on the show. There's the cuteness factor, the cuteness ratio, the way it works.
Oh, big symmetry, big
Yeah,
eyes,
it has
big heads.
Yeah, like because when baby anything, usually the eyes are disproportionately large to the because as the head grows, the eyes don't grow.
Gerbils are like that, and rats probably.
So
big
they have
eyes.
cuteness.
Ever see a baby? Yeah, I have baby
They're
gerbils.
cuter when they're young.
Yeah, everything's cuter when they're young.
Yeah, and they say that the scientists speculate that the purpose for this is for the very purpose that the maintainer, the parent, will feel a sense of attachment.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that's natural. Right? But I'm thinking because this form, this form of this deer, it was like the perfect form for him to experience and enjoy the feeling of being the protector.
Yeah.
For the exchange, for that rustic, for to stir just the right emotions in him that he could relish. In a sense, it's like imitating Krishna, right? If I want to experience the rasa of being the loving maintainer, well, this little fawn, it became the perfect object of that to facilitate that illusion in a sense, right? You with me?
I wonder if there's a baby. I'm just thinking about babies still. Sorry.
Okay, you're not.
I wonder if there's a baby that's
not
cute.
I mean, I suppose cuteness is in the eye of,
Yeah, but we
got to see the baby. Okay.
Baby birds are not that cute. Okay.
So let's continue this. It said
baby ticks.
It said that being attached to raising the deer, Maharaj Bharata forgot the rules and regulations for advancement of spiritual life. He's neglecting his sadhana, his practices. And he gradually forgot to worship the Supreme Personality of God. The affection that he's meant to be directing towards the root of all existence, he found one leaf, this deer, and focused it there. Right? So rather than watering the root, if his affection was directed at Sri Krishna and Lord Vishnu, he could have felt affection and care for every living being, but he focused it on one living being, the cutest one he could find, right?
Right.
And neglected the root. So it says, after a few days, he forgot everything.
I think I got your point from before now when I was squirreling off into babies. The idea is like every living entity is suffering like that deer.
Okay.
There's fish in that river that we're suffering. There's a turtle that's getting,
right. But
attacked by an alligator that's
furry, this particular sweet little furry, virtual being, right? Because that's what I'm saying. It was just on the surface that this being, right? He's only on this. That being took him from the depth of thought where he was seeing everything that's behind the virtual reality that we're living in. Right? Krishna's behind it. Lord Vishnu's behind it, making it all happen, supporting us, maintaining us at every moment. I'm seeing it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling that connection, at every moment, never disconnected. I think this should be one of our slogans for the thing, this kind of like
takeaways,
or even slogans. Or even what do we call those things? We're numbering them at one point. No.
T-shirts, knit them into a scarf.
No, we were numbering them. We had number 1, we had number 34.
Oh, postulates.
Postulates, right?
All right. What's the postulate?
Well, I don't know. We have to work on it, but it's like about never being disconnected. Like Krishna will say, like what nitya yuktasya, and like this is what he's calling for. See everything in connection to me. This is actually, Raghunath, if we go to the Chatur Shloki of the Bhagavatam, right, the 4 nutshell verses of the Bhagavatam, this is like this crucial message is shared there. You know those 4 verses?
Yeah.
You know about them at least.
Yeah, I know.
And this is the second of the 4 verses.
Tell me.
And this is Vishnu speaking to Lord Brahma, right? So it's like God speaking to the creator of the entire universe, right? Like this is these initial conversations, right, that are so important. He says, "O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, it has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears in the darkness." We should do a whole show just on the commentary of this verse. It's so
that's
deep.
Yeah,
Right.
those are deep, and they're sort of like heavy statements as well. And matter of fact, even by reading the story, you can think of like, where are we going with this? Are you saying don't be compassionate?
We're going to get there, yeah.
And this is a big thing. It's compassion with a small c and compassion with a capital C.
Yeah, right.
Right. And
Yeah, I would, we're not going to finish, and we're running out of time today. But I was just thinking, like, for a lot of pet owners, they're well, it sounds like he's doing everything you're supposed to do. He helped the thing, and he loved it, and he petted it, and so on. And we're going to read more just about how obsessed he becomes with this deer.
I think this is a great analogy for everything we're affectionate in life with.
Well, let's keep it
a relationship or friendships or
for a moment, Raghunath. Could I keep it at the pet level? Okay,
let's keep it at the pet level. Okay,
just for a second. So here's my point. Like I was thinking, in many ways, like you have all these different animals on the Super Soul Farm, sheep, and
yes,
used to have birds there and different
birds, cats.
And I can see that, like, with your bhakti perspective, which is a Vedanta, a Vedantic perspective, the relationship that your children had with those animals could be something that helped them realize truth, right? Help them see the soul in every living being, help them see God behind everything. Right? You could frame it for them in that way. And if that's the relationship that we have with animals, then that's a progressive relationship, right? Or the relationship can become different. It is, again, this kind of gets back to my to this original question that I asked earlier. The question is, my role as a maintainer, am I doing it with the awareness that I'm acting as a representative of the ultimate maintainer? Or am I doing it in forgetfulness of this artificially playing that role and trying to taste that feeling, right? It's an important distinction.
Yeah, and that's what we're drilling into the head right now.
Yeah. So
this is all sanding down, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
This is not like the basic concepts of religious practice are be kind, be loving, right? Now we're getting real refined.
It's getting real refined. Sometimes we got to be a little we need to, maybe we could end on this, but there's that famous verse that that's so important in our lineage. Trinada Pisunichena Todori Vasuhishnana Amanina Manadena Kirtanina Sadahari. That it says one must be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree.
More adorable than a baby deer.
More adorable than a little fawn. But I once heard that, that we need to be like the grass, we need to be like a tree. And I once heard someone who was not in our lineage comment on this verse. And he commented on it in a little bit of a different way than I'd ever heard anyone comment on it before.
Huh.
You know who that was?
Madan.
He's in our lineage.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I don't know. Shamdas.
It was Shamdas. Yeah, it was Shamdas. And Shamdas said, the grass is very malleable, right? It's like flexible. It's like that.
Mm.
and the tree is very rigid, right?
Mm.
And so he's saying in devotional practice, we need to know when to be very flexible and when to be rigid.
Nice insight. Nice
Interesting, right?
insight. Yeah.
So we're hearing now about how Maharaj Bharata, he had a certain rigidness in his steadiness of his sadhana, the steadiness of his spiritual practices, but he let that all go, right?
Mm.
And he pays the price for it. So we'll pick that up next Monday, right? But tomorrow's Q&A day.
It's Q&A day, and here is Miss Mara Malibu, Miss Malibu Mara, and she's got some takeaways because we got to get on a plane real quick.
Let's take it away.
Honesty precedes real intimacy.
Dr. Joyce Brothers.
Dr. Joyce,
See behind the facade of the world.
CBGBs.
What?
Let our maintenance of others be based on reality.
There we go.
We're being sanded down before we return to Krishna.
Very refined.
Refined sandpaper.
Live this life with the determination of Judd Bart.
Yeah.
Judd.
That's right. Right? Let's assume that, this could be our last one. We just got to do it this time.
Prioritize and maintain your spiritual practice.
Okay.
Yep.
There's a time to let go of all your duties when your only duty is to Krishna.
There's a time to change.
When
it's time to change.
Hurry like you are.
I thought
I was like you.
I was going to hook you up. I thought you were going to do the other one. When it's time to change, you have to rearrange. Raghunath.
You're going to get muted.
You're going to miss your flight, Raghunath. You're going to miss your
We're
flight.
going to get muted and miss our flight.
And
And don't let a baby deer keep you from the main thing.
Okay, fair enough.
yeah.
Don't let it suffer, but don't get obsessed.
Just give it a little deer chow and go on your way.
Little
chow.
deer
I
milk.
Have deer chow.
Get one of those.
Thanks everybody for
bottles.
joining us. Did anybody get to the bottom of Ace of Spades?
Oh yeah, Ace of Spades. It's a good thing, Raghunath.
No,
Aces
it's
are
not
good
a
in
good
poker.
thing. Someone said. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. Ace of Spades. Wait, is it the baby does? I'm trying to go back on the message board right now. Someone search that out for me, Mara. Thanks everybody for joining us. Tomorrow's Q&A day. Guess what? You get to sleep in 1 hour. 8 o'clock tomorrow morning for those who aren't joining us on Zoom. Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com will get you the secret codes to enter into our private oven.